Hey, Kristen. This is my response to your first video blog. I thought you did a great job. I thought your presentation was really interesting, especially the part at the end where you talk about your own personal experience. That really brought to light just how difficult it is to care for a child with disabilities. I don't have any kids yet, and so for me, just caring for my dogs is enough if they have an issue with the and having to go to the vet. Taking time off of work really just kind of disrupts everything, makes me nervous for paying my bills. So I just can't imagine how much you and your family have gone through with the multitude of services that your child requires. And it seems as though, I don't want to assume, it seems as though you have good support and good resources and good ability to communicate, good ability to pay for these services. You had mentioned you paid out of pocket for some physical therapy services, which really flagged in my mind just how extensive the thought processes need to be going into trying to address some of the disparities that face, like you had mentioned, Black children with cerebral palsy that face these challenges. And just off the top of my head, thinking back to my own video blog, I did it on the disparities facing children with asthma, and found that Black children and Hispanic children both faced increased disparities in terms of asthma management compared to white children. So you're looking at a multitude of factors. You're looking at the ability to pay for services, the ability to get to these appointments. Like you had mentioned, follow-up is really independently managed. It falls a lot on the shoulders of the parent. There isn't a lot of monitoring and kind of, like you had said, knocking on your door to get you to these follow-up appointments and getting you to these services, making sure you can keep track of all these things. And for a lot of disadvantaged children, you're looking at single-parent families or shared custody situations, lower socioeconomic status, tougher work schedules. And so making these appointments can be difficult for these families, especially if you're relying on one income. And so taking days off of work really poses a huge problem for these families. So then you're seeing these poor outcomes. So doing this project has really made me understand just how extensive the healthcare disparities are facing these chronic illnesses that require frequent follow-ups and close monitoring. And if those things aren't attainable to certain people, certain children, certain families, then it makes sense that the outcomes are poor. And so in addressing these things, like you had said, really in-person interactions are the way to address them. But getting to those in-person interactions is a huge step that needs to be addressed. We need to find a way to enable these families to interact with providers, interact with services, PT, OT, speech, nutrition, growth and development. And so I think telehealth is a good way of bridging that gap. Some people are just better able to interact over their mobile devices as opposed to arranging for transportation, which can be tough if you're living in an urban setting and you have to travel a long way, especially with a child with disabilities. Meeting from home is a good way to get that interaction with a provider. And one thing that I had mentioned in my presentation with asthma is a lot of housing authorities and schools have partnered with services for these children. And so if you can get them to school, then you have an opportunity, if there are these affiliations, to get them some services while they're in the school setting. Or even if the housing authority can arrange for these services, on some kind of schedule. There are a lot of different options, but we definitely need to, as providers, find a way to interact with these children and make sure that they're getting the services they need so we can start to improve those outcomes. Thank you for your presentation. I thought it was great. I learned a lot from it, and take care.